Well, thank you very much for coming. We really appreciate, it's just so different to have a film and to have the filmmaker together. It just makes it the experience complete. I really thought that the movie was exceptionally good, because especially the long time that it took to make. So can you please explain how you started the project, how you bumped into this couple, if you knew them before, if you work in a charity, or anything, the background to start with, please.
Yeah, we filmed the film over a period of 6 years, and it started out with a Danish filmmaker. We actually 3 directors on the project. I'm the main director who followed most of the time through, but the project was initiated by another director, and he knew the couple from having met them on a travel in Iran, and he started filming them. They contacted him before they wanted to escape from Iran, and they felt that they wanted somebody to watch over them because they were insecure whether it would be dangerous for them to leave Iran and go to Turkey. And apparently there's a history of people just disappearing in Iran, and they thought that that might happen to them as well. So they wanted somebody to document their life. And they ended up working with this director for a year, and he doesn't have the same experience in long-term documentary cinema. So he couldn't finance the film, and he came to my production house, and we started to talk about the project. And so we cooperated with a third director as well to come forward. I live in Copenhagen, Denmark, and Turkey is a plane ride away. And when it's not Corona times, you can go pretty easily between the cities. So we just put up a schedule, the 3 of us, the directors, and we divided the time between us so that we could go whenever we felt that something interesting would happen in the family's life, so that you get this feeling of a more organic storytelling than if you're more square with your time and you have to fit the reality into your shooting schedule. It sometimes feel like you're not there at the right moments. So we try to be organic, and we are a group of people who can make sound and make the images ourselves. So we're just like a very flexible unit. So I shot a lot of the material that you see in the film, and the other directors did so as well. So we were kind of able to come and go on a very short notice.
Okay, yeah, no, because that my other question was this, because sometimes, it felt like it was incredible that you could actually get always, the right moments. I mean, as far as, for example, them going to the embassy, it makes sense that, of course, you would be there, the day they need to receive a reply, or, it's just a turning point in this story. But also other times, inside the house, for example, really, I felt that, it was just so good what you were shooting. I felt like maybe they were reenacting again, something that they just went through, or was that all the time just they were actually, a first shot, you were just actually there when they had troubles and stuff?
Yeah, most of the time it was like that, but we also formed a kind of a cooperation with the couple. They wanted the film to happen, and they were also very cooperative and very good at being documentary characters. So they were very disciplined in actually filming something if something important happened in their life, or they were good at calling us when they got an email from the UNHCR, which the asylum case became more or less the plot that we followed. So that was what we tried to go and visit them whenever something happened in their case, and then we would pick up on all the other layers of the story, which is more about like forming a family, a relationship, and integrating in a society, and making a life that is worth living.
Right. Okay, so in certain times they were actually self-shooting themselves. They were actually okay. Yeah. That's what I thought. That's what, because there was some scene it couldn't be possible that there was actually a person shooting them, because it was so just spontaneous, just happened there. So, okay, but it's interesting because in a way they were just co-workers. I mean, they were just collaborating on the project, not only because they were talking about themselves, but also because they were using cameras and etc. Interesting.
They had their small mobile phones like all of us have, and they were good at like when something new came, like a decision from the UNHCR on their telephones, they were very good at just documenting it and sending it to us.
Yeah. Okay.
How did you find like giving that kind of control to them? How does it work within
your but I mean
practice?
It's their life. How can I not give control to them? I mean, I'm the one editing the story, but I think it's better for all of us if we can contribute with what we have, and they actually live their own life, and they have control anyway. If they don't want something to be in the film, they can just not give it to us. So I think it's always about trust and about like building a relationship where you contribute. I have to contribute so that they can contribute. It's not like you just, as a director, you can't just fly in and take things. You need to get the right understanding, and we still communicate. We still have issues with each other. I've been in that family for so many birthdays of the son has been going through for these years. So I still feel very close to them, even I haven't been able to visit them because of the lockdown. So it's a relationship. It's not about one having the control and the other not having to have any say over it.
Yeah, no, but I could feel that through the film. There was really, I mean, a rapport going on between you and the family. If not, I mean, if there's no trust in in a situation like this, in which you go inside their house and you really look at everything that's happening, especially all the issues and problems, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't work. So it's really exceptionally good that you managed to do that, and I guess that it probably all kind of long project have that kind of outcome that you get very close to the people, right?
Yeah, definitely. That's I mean, that's part of it, that you actually become film friends in a way, that you do this project together, and I think that's also part of the interesting stuff for us as documentary filmmakers, that we really get to know a lot of the layers in people's life, and that we can we know more than what you see on the screen. But actually, I think it's very it's also why it gives a depth to the story, that you have that kind of understanding or that kind of relationship. And especially in this case, it was very, they were very easy to work with. They were very transparent in front of the camera and good at showing what was happening to them. And we didn't have many issues, as you can have with characters from reality who has layers and control issues. And this particular family were very good at being just very inviting and very open in front of the camera.
Yeah, was it easy also with the child, with the kid?
I mean, in the beginning, he didn't speak any English when he was small, so he was very much just under the protection of his parents. So they took the decisions for him, what he could participate in and how to protect him. But later on, we started to be able to form a relationship. So and now he's grown like a teenage boy, and it's very easy to communicate with him, and he also got interested in the cinema making along the way.
That's interesting. That's good. So basically, you're just learning some new skills. Yeah. So the other question that I wanted to ask, and then I'll let other people also, is about do you think that the kind of film that you're making, or this one in particular, will help the people to reach some kind of outcome in their life? I mean, is this something? Of course, I mean, I think this is because you're doing this, I mean, you do have a purpose, you do have an aim. So do you think this is something that will get them, eventually the visa to go to Canada, or more attention, from the High Commission for Refugees or whatever? I mean, what's the, how do you see your work on this film?
No, I don't think that we can change those kind of things. I think we can bring awareness to the issue, and maybe for the audience that watch the film, we can maybe change their minds a bit, or bring a certain kind of emotional relationship into the discussion that is often just something that you see in the news that is not as deep, and you don't get to know people, and you just hear about the refugees when they are more like numbers or statistics. But for the particular case, we are unfortunately unable to change their situation. They're still stuck, and it's the same problems that they have. And they've had a lot of issues with the UNHCR, and they feel that they have been somehow trapped and been enrolled in kind of a corruption case where they've been sent to a so-called safe house. We don't have this in the film, but that has happened to them in the beginning when they came to Turkey, and that house turned out to be to belong to a guy who's connected to the Iranian intelligence service. So they have a lot of problems and claims against the UNHCR, and we can't change their status, and it's unfortunately very difficult for them to be repatriated or resettled.
I see. Okay, yeah, because it's just so courageous what they've done, and of course also to represent and repropose their their journey. It would be really something that you should. This kind of film should be shown in schools and everywhere. To just get that kind of interest, and to make people aware of what's happening. Yeah. Is that where do you show the film usually? Festival, or also as a part of a didactic plan?
No, it's been screened. It had its premiere in 2019 in TIFF, in the big Toronto festival that hosts both fiction and documentary. And since then, it has been picked up by several buyers. It's been screened all over Scandinavia and different European broadcasters, and it's been shown in America on public television. So it has had its show different places. It was supposed to open in England in cinemas, but it came just when you locked down again in December.
December. Oh, I see.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, we think that a film like this will have its place somehow. It will find its audience, and it has found its audience. And we also have a educational kind of strategy for it. But it is, I think it's like an epic story. It's a love story, and it's not only a political story. And I think that's the strength of this particular story, is that you can watch it just as a good film, and you don't need to necessarily see it because you need to learn something. And that's my kind of idea for documentary films. I think they can be beautiful, funny, touching, strong as fiction films can. And this couple definitely has the potential to move other people. So that's what we try to do with this film, is to make a good story.
No, it's true.
From there, we hope that that it will bring some kind of awareness with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's true. I was really impressed by that. The fact that it was just so much concentrated on them. On the fact that they love each other. They wanted to recreate another, a new life, and with the child and everything. It's true. I mean, it's a film that makes you identify a lot with the couple, and so you really feel part of their environments, and you don't feel like they're distant, or they're the different country, different culture, and everything. But you really, I mean, it could happen to anybody. It could happen to English people, Italian people, Polish people, anything. So and that's when you manage to make it turn it into a universal kind of subject, then that's, when you get, then the boundaries between documentary and film, they blur, it's the same thing. Yeah, you're totally right. Yeah. So have we got June or Angie, anybody that wants to? Both of you. Well, let's start with June then.
Okay. Well, first of all, huge congratulations on the film, Eva. Absolutely marvelous. I loved it. And it's such bad luck with the COVID. I'm sure it would have got fabulous word of mouth on a release, like for Sama did. And it would have really done, I know it would have done well. I hope it'd still get a chance, when we open up again. It reminded me a little bit of Fosama, but what Fosama, which I also absolutely love, but I love the way they're under just as much fear and danger, but from more hidden things. It didn't have the sort of flashiness of bombs and things going off, but it was more hidden. And I loved the way it was just a love story. I mean, they made the ultimate sacrifice. And, particularly Layla missed her family, didn't she? But, and the way that Manny gradually came to love his father from the beginning, I thought it was just thrilling, absolutely wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your words, for your kind words.
Right.
And
I wish I could think of a question. I did have some, but I think you've already answered the ones I had. So.
Okay.
No, but I think it's maybe interesting.
Talk about it.
It's maybe interesting because you mentioned Fosama, which is also a very strong personal story,
Yes.
and it takes place in a current affairs kind of setting, but it comes from a very different point of view. And I think it's important that we try to understand that I mean, you have a very strong journalistic tradition in England, the BBC and all of important stuff that has happened and come from your tradition. But I think that cinema can do different things. We can tell different kind of stories, and they can somehow maybe bring us closer to human aspects, when it's not only about information, it's about actually seeing the world through other people's eyes. And that's kind of a different approach that Fosama does very well, because we heard a lot about the war in Syria, but I think through that film you will actually be more able to understand how it could be to be in their situation. Whereas we tend to listen a lot and understand intellectually when we are talked to in terms of statistics and things that we can read in the news. But the general, that when we empathize with other people, or we kind of feel for them, I think it's a different way that the stories stay with us, and they touch us in a more emotional way.
Yeah. Totally.
That was actually quite well achieved as well. So I don't know, am I cutting in front of someone else? So I don't know.
No, go ahead.
But I thought that was really well achieved, actually, especially the moment when in 2015, where you're filming them watching the American news about the 7 countries being banned, 7 Muslim countries. And I loved their reaction, because they were like, well, religion was not our issue. And I thought it was just such a nice bridge. You don't need to say much. You kind of put things into perspective, because it's so easy to just pinpoint countries on a map and not, the agenda didn't look at the people and what they were going through themselves. And actually my question was actually a bit around that, because in terms of how the story arc, it follows like so many different levels. There's the love story, there's a parallel with Syria, who, for them it gets in the way of the application, from their point of view, whether it is or not, I don't know. But how do you know when you because obviously you can't foresee when you make such a documentary that it's going to take 5 years, 10 years, 2 months, right? Because there's so many variables. At what point did you know when this was, you know, like almost like a painting? It feels like this, but when do you know it's finished? Like, how did you know it was finished? And because I remember, like, I was like, the end for me was, I was like, I was almost more sad not to know. I was like, God, they're still there, they're still waiting. But at the same time, they made their life, like they had everything. They had a community all of a sudden. You know, the last scene, the last birthday was very touching. So how did you know? How do you know when to stop? Because it must be hard, because their life still carries on, but at the same time, it's a nice ending. Like, what's your secret? And by the way, jag svensk, så vill säga hi. I just wanted to say something in English.
Yeah. It's your dansk ud. Sorry, we start to let the others out of the conversation. No, it's, I think there's a saying among documentary filmmakers. Is a special documentary filmmaker woman who said this, but she said, like, you bet on some people and then you see what life does to them. And I think that's the kind of approach that I try to do myself, that you don't know what path and how long that path will be, but you will try to follow that. And sometimes this particular film, we thought it might be only a few years until they would be resettled in a country and we could close the story there, but it turned out to be a different path for them. So we had to follow that until we had a closure for the plot, which was their asylum seeking case. So we waited for that to have kind of ended. And when you're shooting, you can feel that sometimes there's a lot of several years when we went, there was a lot of stuff happening, and we had to come back and forth between Denmark and Turkey many times. And other years it was kind of thin, and there was not really a lot of important things happening. And in the end, it felt like we had that closure of the plot case. And then we also felt that when we came to visit this family, of course new things happened, but it also felt like we were shooting more or less the same stuff that we already covered. So that's the feeling you get when you come to an end. Somehow you feel like you have it all, and it's repeating itself in a way, or it's circling around the same things, or you often bet on different strands in the story. We had a more political part of the story about the corruption case that was very difficult for us to integrate in the story, because we shoot it in this more cinematic way where you use scenes and not much interview, and it's not an investigating style. But that part of the story we followed for a long time as well. So sometimes you need to analyze a bit what is actually the strongest here, and a lot of good stories often come with different layers to them. So to analyze what is the best and what makes the story unique, and to filter out a lot of other storylines that could have worked, but they end up not giving what you wanted from them, or they became too complicated, or there might be other issues. I think that's of course in the editing, but we often, because we shoot for that many years, we do editing while we are shooting, so we are not just sitting on a pile of material in the end and then have to start all over again. So you have to actually work, shoot, go into the editing and shoot, so that you are on top of your project and you understand what you're doing.
It's almost like keeping it simple, isn't it? Like we have one story and then the rest needs to almost fall away. Okay.
Yeah, but I think in these kind of films, it's like you need one main story, but you need to understand what is, in this case, for example, we have the asylum case with the UNHCR, which is kind of the motor of the film, and then you have their love story, which is kind of the underlying emotional story. And in most films that end up being interesting, you need to have more layers. One story in itself is maybe not enough, but they have to be simple enough so that we can actually experience them, instead of just all the time looking for where are we, who are they, what is going on here. So it's a difficult dance between complexity and simplicity.
Mm. You need to find components that kind of fit together. It's almost like composing like a picture from Tetris blocks, right?
Yeah, something
there
like
is
that.
There's going to be much more material than he actually showed, but just kind of having so does the storyline kind of like the main storyline, it sounds like it came in quite early, but then it kind of like grew like a tree. It grew kind of like side fronds, if I can like put it this way. So because obviously like when we started talking first, it's shooting for such a long period of time, you said certain things repeat and certain things come up. So do the side stories come kind of like, do you incorporate them along the way and try to build them up, or does it come more in a post-production and then you find the bits to put together to build the side stories?
Well, I mean, reality very rarely looks like film. It's a big mess out there, and there's a lot of things happening that are not really useful in a film, and there's a lot of time that is spent looking into things that will never make it into the film. And that's I mean, of course it's a lot about finding the right story in the editing, but it's also about analyzing it when you're out there and not waiting. I mean, we sometimes joke that there are directors and there are collectors, and collectors, they just collect a lot of stuff and then they wait a lot of years and then somebody has to sort it out for them. And I think a director is somebody who tries to make choices along the way, but we never know really. So we have to bet on different strands of the story, but we also have to analyze and make choices. So everything is not interesting, and you have to understand that while you're shooting, so that you can focus on the stuff that is actually gonna be your strongest material. Otherwise, you will get so many things that goes in so many directions that the simplicity needed and the simplicity that we achieved in this film will not be there.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And selectiveness.
Yeah, because when you were talking about the corruption, it's also, I mean, the fact that the work of the husband, you know, was just a very specific work, you know, like it's a secret agent, or, you know, something that wasn't really, you know, it wasn't really explored. You know, it was just told and then you just let it go because, yeah, probably that wasn't relevant to the story itself.
Well, for a long time we thought that might also be really interesting. I mean, you have the whole fiction tradition of spy movies, and there was a lot of really interesting elements to his story, and that also complex political stuff that could like teach us a lot about what the Iranian system is like, and how it is like for him to kind of be forced to work for something he doesn't believe in, and then how to kind of come out of that and try to clean himself of the guilt of having supported a system he didn't like. And so there was a lot of elements to that story that was interesting, but it just turned out in the end that it became too complex to go deeper into that. And we had other layers to the story that we felt were stronger, because a lot of what that story held it happened before we really started shooting the film. So we didn't have scenes to tell us these things, and it happened in the past, or it happened in a safe house where we didn't really shoot those things that were important for that part of the story. So sometimes you might have really interesting elements to a certain part of the story, but in terms of form, it doesn't really come through.
Sure.
You know, in terms of his story, because I was wondering, because now it makes a little bit more sense, some of his remarks and comments, and because like I would definitely be interested in, I don't know obviously how much material you have, and I guess it's true, like when you create something you don't want to like revisit, it's like it's kind of done. But even if it was like a 10-minute or 15-minute, I would definitely love to watch like almost like, you know, like how do you call them, like an extension of an existing film or something, and see what it is he's talking about. Because when he talks about at the beginning, he says, you know, they were worried they had microphones in the house, and he sounds and obviously, like, because we don't have much, we obviously know Iran, they've suffered so much over there, but without, people who don't know, it may sometimes sound a little bit like he's paranoid because it's there isn't really a construct behind it. Whereas now hearing you talking about it, and saying, like how when he first arrived, they were put in a safe house that wasn't safe, that kind of stuff is quite traumatic for someone who comes out of Iran. So a lot of things sort of make sense. His behavior, the things he says, kind of make sense now.
Yeah, but I guess he would love that to happen. To make we tried to set him up with journalists to tell his story, but it hasn't really worked out yet. But he feels he's sad, and I understand that his part of the story is not really totally
explored,
laid out in the film, and I also understand that has been a really important part of their journey. And it's a weird business somehow. What we do is like we take somebody's life and then we just use the parts that we feel works for the storytelling that we are doing, and the rest we just leave out. And when you have lived that life, it's definitely a different composition. But I think that's my job as a storyteller to decide what I can tell with the material that I have collected, and then it's up to us to find a balance where they can see themselves in these selections. But it's never like that any life or any story is fully portrayed in a documentary film. It will always have an angle, otherwise
of course
it's going to be too long a film.
Oh yeah, and it wasn't even a critique of that. So because I know Sarah had a question, but like I just wanted to say, like, it's more like, I guess I feel like he almost could have his own documentary. Like, it would have been too much for sure. It would be too much to just watch. Also, probably almost be it would be too much, emotionally, to just watch. But yeah, that was all. But yeah.
Okay.
Sorry,
Thank you.
Sarah. Sorry.
No, thank you.
That's okay.
Sarah, yes, please go ahead.
I'm really enjoying the discussion. I wanted to say what a very tender film it was. But I have a question, which is, did they feel safer? Did they feel that they would be safer being filmed and having the documentary made? Because there are a couple of moments where the fear, I mean, as soon as we knew he'd been sort of enrolled by the security services and then he left, you knew that he was in a great deal of danger that may be very hidden. And there were two moments in the film where the fear really broke through. One is where they go to the consulate and they leave the boy in the car. And we know from what happened to the Saudi journalist that that's a real point of danger. And the other one was where he turned the laptop so that Layla was visible on the camera, and I've lived through sort of similar moments where I don't want to speak to someone and suddenly I'm forced to speak, but not at risk of my life, and you could see the fear in there. And that was my question. Did they feel that by participating in the documentary they would be safer in Turkey?
That was the starting point of the whole film. So they invited one of my colleagues, Morten, Danish director, into their lives because they felt that they would be more secure having somebody following them. I guess they didn't know exactly what they were coming out to because they have never traveled. They've only been in Iran, and in the beginning they were very secure about this, that it would be more safe for them. And all the way through the many years we followed them. But then we came to the end of the film and we needed to make a strategy for how to publish it. And at that point we needed to find out, because at that time Layla's family didn't know, she hadn't told them that the backstory of Mani, how he was born, and who was his real father. So there was also like concerns about their safety in Iran if this came out, and they didn't know and how to manage all of this. So of course they've been brave to actually stand by their decision and to let this film be visible for all of you and for a lot of other people around the world. But I guess it's difficult for, I've been trusting them a lot because they know the Iranian system. And I don't know exactly how much of what is going on in their head is real threats and how much is fear of having lived in a country or in a system where anything can happen to anybody all the time. So we've been leaning very much into their own kind of decisions of what they thought was good for them and what was dangerous for them, and up till now nothing has happened to them, but it doesn't mean that there's not been anybody keeping an eye on them or yeah. So it's a lot of this stuff is very fluffy, and that's like that. Sometimes you feel like maybe it's paranoia, maybe it's real, and it might also be both.
Yeah, true. No, but actually that segment of the story, you know, in which the husband shows the wife, you know, I felt really very awkward and embarrassed myself, because it's really, I mean, in a way, he put in danger, even if it's you know, just a fear because they were frightened or because, you know, they come from a difficult country, etc. But at the same time, you can see that everything is possible. I mean, they can be followed even to Turkey. I mean, it wouldn't be the first time that they do it. So it's yeah, it was really a very tense moment, I have to say. Definitely, yeah.
Actually, I have a bit of a bit of a silly question. I mean, because I've got a feeling I'm the only one who didn't get this. But I did, because they're still in Turkey, and during the process. So I'm a bit shocked because obviously it's quite complex immigration. But what is their status now? Because obviously they're still in Turkey. Are they safe? They're not going to be returned to Iran? Are they sort of in a limbo now because they haven't gone to America? Like, what's the actual? Do you know what's their status?
Yeah. They are refugees, accepted as refugees, quota refugees under the UNHCR, which means that they're protected. They are not supposed to be. It's not supposed to be possible to send them back to Iran, but they're not getting any stable ground under their feet, meaning that they don't have any basic rights anywhere. As long as they have jobs in Turkey, they have a kind of some basic rights that comes with a job, like social rights, and they can go to hospitals, this and that. But what they were longing for and still is longing for, and that what is very painful for them, is that they want to belong somewhere, and they want to give their son a stable ground to build his life on. And that they have not achieved, and it's very stressful for them. And unfortunately, there's not many countries in the world right now taking refugees in. I mean, you see in the film that America closes. Before there was Norway maybe still takes some, Australia still takes some, but since we have had the refugee crisis and all of the people coming up through Europe and just walking over the borders of different countries, a lot of countries has closed down their quota refugee programs. And that means that not many countries are taking quota refugees, and those who take people in and give them a new start, a citizenship, or at least like a permanent permanent, some kind of, like you can stay permanently there. They have to take, or the UNHCR has a policy saying that you have to take the most vulnerable first. And these guys, they are actually very strong. They have managed to fix their life in a quite amazing way for the refugees. I mean, it's not many refugees who can get a job at the same level as what they had in their country of origin. So I think it can take a long time if ever these guys are resettled. And I think they have a cool life in Turkey. They have good friends, and they have managed to establish themselves. So it's not like it's a horrible life, but it's horrible for them to not have security. And I think we don't think that much about that our life is built on something that we just take for granted.
I guess it's that stateless thing they were saying all the way through, is that feeling they don't belong anywhere, or
they are Iranian citizens, but they can't go back. So and it's very unlikely that they're going to be able to become Turkish citizens, and it's very unlikely that some other country will.
Because it's that grieving as well, isn't it? It's grieving their whole. It's like death. I mean, because they know they'll never be able to go back, or they may know they'll never see them. But the America thing, was just like, because we all know that timeline, you know, in hindsight, not at the time, but when they were saying, oh yeah, we got to pick America, or they gave us America, I was like, oh my God, no, they're gonna separate them at the border, you know, because obviously we know what happened, you know, in that same time period, and so as much as it's horrible for them now, it's kind of a blessing in disguise that they didn't go, because what if they got separated? And imagine that little Manny away from his parents. I mean, it's unimaginable.
Yeah, but still, when I talk to them now, they say, I mean, we would have done anything to just get a stable ground under our feet, because this is unbearable. So, of course, you're right. And I think they have managed to create something great for them, but they don't have what they were looking for. And emotionally, it's very difficult.
No, it's not ideal. It's still suffering. Yeah.
In a way, I think it's a good lesson for all of us, kind of in a time of the quarantine and the restrictions and everything, that kind of like they seem to have made the best of the bad situation. So it's a lesson for all of us that, like, no matter what circumstances kind of we're under, we can still kind of like stay friends or make friends and build something and make something out of ourselves. So it's just about perseverance and the drive and the love that we have. So it's silver lining.
No, I agree.
We're used to having a lot of choices in our part of the world, and maybe it's also time for us to try and understand that there's a lot of people who doesn't have that kind of choice. And now that we have been put under restrictions, maybe we can emotionally understand people like Leila and Sahan better, that they can't travel. They're not able to travel. They have not been able to move anywhere for the last 6, 7, 8 years because they don't have a passport.
Hopefully it's going to be more sensitizing experience for all of us, and kind of it's going to make us look into it a bit more and be less judgmental and more kind of empathic or empathetic towards the issue. And yeah, because it's only like skin deep when you see people talk about refugees and saying they are this or they are that. And as you said before, they are not just numbers or statistics. There are people with their own stories, and like all of us like have our own stories. And it's funny how each individual stories are kind of incomparable, because they are all the biggest to us as individuals, but in the same time they are very kind of like, it's all relatable. So it's all about just kind of like us opening up a little bit and listening more and judging less, right?
Yeah, well, definitely. I'd like to know a bit about your new project coming up, and unless we got any more questions about the film, Sarah and June. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to ask, is it much harder to get funding as a documentary maker? Because you can't get, particularly one like this, where you can't give them the sort of full picture of how the film's going to go and how it's going to end. Was it very hard?
It is always difficult to get funding for documentary films. And as you say, for these kind of films, in a way, this is a very small story. And we just trusted that we could put the bigger story into this small story. But if you're a commissioning editor, you might want to buy something that is a bit more flashy and a bit more hardcore. And it can be very difficult for these soft stories to make it, because you have to see them and understand the depth of the character before you can actually understand the depth of the story. And I think it's a little bit of a shame that documentary cinema is not as expensive. It's not a shame that it's not as expensive as fiction, but we actually able to create strong stories for less money than fiction. But it seems that we are not really rewarded for success in our line of work. I mean, it's difficult for us to make money on the films and to make a box office or anything like that. So maybe in fiction you have a better chance of actually getting a reward economically, and then using that for the next film. Whereas in documentary cinema, it's
I remember the first time that a documentary won in Cannes. You know, the famous documentary by the American filmmaker. And you know, everybody was absolutely astounded and surprised and said, how come, you know, instead of a feature film, instead of fiction, you know, we get a documentary. And since then I thought that, you know, things would get easier for everybody, but eventually we're still talking about, you know, how documentary can be supported and promoted. It's a bit also like the same thing for shorts, but shorts, it's really because of the nature, the fact that you know, they're just not, you know, the extended version. And so that's why. But documentary, you know, your documentary, it's about what, almost 2 hours long. So it means like it's a proper length, you know, to be used and to be screened in cinemas. But at the same time, it's like there's it's just it seems like the public or cinemas or whoever are not ready for that. Yeah, I guess.
I just wanted to add in quickly that I went on Twitter just to check before this talk, and there's really good stuff on Twitter about the film. So I just wanted to feed that back to you. So that I think it may be one of those things with a slow burn, and COVID gradually, you know, people are so hungry for stories, and the lockdown may be loosening slowly, but I think we're going to still be needing to be online with each other. And that gives me more hope for things like documentaries in general, because it really touches the soul in a way that a fiction doesn't.
Yeah, and we have the term of having a long tail. It's like when you do documentaries like this, you have to think that they have to stand in time. They're not supposed to be irrelevant within the next year or so. Whereas if you do more news kind of stories, they disappear. Whereas these stories, you can actually screen them over and over again, because we try to make them universal in a way. And in that way, you might be right that it's just a slow burner, but it will stay for a longer time.
Yeah.
But we'll share it. I'll share it. I'll share it online, because I didn't know about it until I had the email from our group. So yeah, and I'll definitely share it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll recommend it too, definitely.
Yeah. No, I think that it would be good that you come to London, you know, once the lockdown is over, and we hope, you know, on May 17th, cinemas will reopen. So we really, you know, hope for everybody and wish that, you know, we could finally go and show films in the right place, which is cinema. So that, you know, probably would be good for you. If it's not the summer, after the summer, I mean, you know, if we go back to some kind of normality, then, you know, things are going to be easier for everybody. So yeah, I just definitely wish that. Yeah, please tell us a little bit about your new project, because I guess that you got something coming up. Or
we're still in development with the project that is it's an international film that we try to do under the circumstances of now. That is, like, we can't travel, so we've been it takes place in the travel business. So we follow different people who are touched by the lockdown and who are living from tourism. And some of the stories are here in Scandinavia. We shoot them here. But then we have a local director in Venice who shoots a local story there, and we have a local director in Thailand who shoots a story there, and one in Mallorca, which is like the epicenter that started all of the charter tourism. So it's about, we try to portray the time we live in now under these very weird circumstances, but we also try to find a subject that can be interesting on a longer term. So it's about people in crisis, or how to manage crisis, how to handle the fact that your world is upside down. So we follow a very rich guy who owns a travel agency and 200 hotels, and we follow his kind of crisis control of the crisis and how he maneuvers, and then we follow a PR woman who's working in this big travel group of his, and we follow a stewardess who's been working for 35 years in this company and who's fired. And in Venice, we follow a lawyer who is fighting for Venice not to go back into mass tourism, but he wants to change the city into having a more quality tourism and less people coming, staying longer. And so he's trying to get something out of this crisis. So it's different kind of crisis strategies.
Yeah, well, very, very interesting. Yeah, especially the Venice side. If they could really stop mass tourism, there would be the lifesaver for a whole country, not only for Venice. Because when I see the big ship coming in, that they completely obscure the city. It's like living on another planet.
It's bigger than Venice itself, isn't it? It's like a city itself coming in.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So again, even for this project, I really, really wish that everything, it's going to be back to normal in a little while, so that we can start traveling. And it seems like in June we will be able to travel. I mean, at least from the UK.
Thank you for being here and watching the film and for hosting me tonight.
Yeah, thank you so much, Eva. Really wish you all the best with your projects, and we'll be in touch.
Looking forward to the new solution to tourism crisis. Like, it's really interesting, particularly when you said kind of like, just changing the face, because some cities kind of like thrive on tourism, so the whole economy is kind of like pretty much built around it. So how to sustain the living of a city or a country, let alone, and but still kind of like make it not so quick, I'll put it that way. It's like fast fashion. It all has appeals, but like how to change the face of it, it's fascinating. So I'm really looking forward to kind of like seeing what you're up to next.
Thank you so much. I think we need to learn from what we go through, right? So not just go back to how it was before, but take something new with us. And that's like a new direction somehow to kind of not just...
It's going to be another shock coming out of this crisis and coming out of lockdowns, because like in a way, kind of like what I've heard from a lot of people, they say they want to go back to normal. But then because we've had this experience, it's going to be, and we're going to have to go through another shock, like suddenly being open up to everything. But like it's going to leave something in us. So let's hope it's going to be all good lessons, and we're going to come up like better than before. So
yeah. So Eva, what were you saying? Sorry.
No. I was just agreeing that's we have an opportunity in a crisis. We might learn something new.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, we really hope so.
Progress Optimist Club.
Yeah. Thank you very much again, and have a good night, and hope to see you in London soon.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye.